see it now.
Very clear, Wasekwa. Nangeno vender
Okay. All right. Okay, so this session is about the Faith Avenue, and the Faith Avenue being one of the key ministries of the church. It is effectively about the church outside the church building, how we do church as believers outside our church buildings, how we work together in faith. That is what the Faith Avenue is about. And once again, we're saying each of these avenues are key elements of making our church healthier and making us even healthier as Christians. So that's what we want to focus on. So we have done the two sessions already on the Hope Avenue and the Love Avenue. This is the third one. We'll continue to have this every 4 months. And the next one will be, I think, on the Hope Avenue, and trying to explore further what is happening and sharing good practices from the various churches. So as a way of introduction, once again, to get the concept clear in our minds, we're saying that like a three-legged pot, the church has three ministries, which are its pillars. And if any of these pillars are not there, there will be a skewness to the activity and ministry of the church, in that it will be lying to one side. So this pot, Nick, requires all the three legs to be standing, and to be standing with equal length or height. Otherwise, then it is going to be leaning to one side, and the stuff that are inside are going to spill over. And so it's important that we understand that these three avenues, hope, faith, and love, are critical, and they need to be balanced within our activities. So the ministry of the church must stand on the hope, faith, and love avenues. So one of the issues, therefore, we need to be continuously asking ourselves is whether each of these avenues is well articulated in our churches. And if not, we need to see where the gaps are in each of those. Just to recap in terms of how we see the early church practicing some of these things. So if you look in Acts 2, the Hope Avenue is expressed in terms of what activity they were involved in Acts 2:46, where it says, every day they continue to meet together in the temple courts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. This is what today we refer to as our gathering in the public spaces like the churches or the school halls or wherever we are meeting, even our own church buildings, praising together and worshiping together and so on. The Love Avenue is what we find expressed in Acts 2:47, where as the church continued to minister in its community, the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So we find that the church was not only gathering together, but more people from the outside were being impacted by the gospel. And thirdly, in Acts 2:42, we see the Faith Avenue activities, where it says they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to the breaking of bread and to prayer. The last part, they broke bread in their homes, and that's the part that speaks specifically to the Faith Avenue. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts. So we find the church in the early church that is gathering together for worship, that is impacting its community around with the gospel, and also that is growing together outside the church or the temple courts. In their homes, they were meeting together in fellowship and sharing meals and growing together in the faith. Because the reality is, when you meet in those contexts, iron sharpens iron, as we know from Proverbs. And therefore, as we continue to discuss these things, we continue to grow together. So we'll look at some of the elements of that, because sometimes we tend to limit the Faith Avenue activities to very few. Matthew 28, the Great Commission that Jesus gave to the church, he also expresses that in some way. In Matthew 28:17, it says, when they saw him, they worshiped him. So worshiping is very much a central pillar of what the church is about, what the disciples of Jesus do. And that's what our Hope Avenue is about. It's about gathering together and worshiping Jesus. And a church that doesn't gather to worship, then probably is not a church. And the Love Avenue is what Jesus tells us in Matthew 28:19, where he says, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. So that's important to do. It is a mandate of the church to go out with the gospel and preach. And the Faith Avenue in Matthew 28, verse 20, Jesus also told them, not only are you to worship, not only are you to go out with the gospel, you are also supposed to teach the believers to obey everything I've commanded you. You are supposed to disciple them and help them grow in the faith to know the things that Jesus wanted to teach the church. Okay. And I think previously we have mentioned this, but we are going to repeat it for emphasis. The church is a community, it's a gathering community. And therefore we need to understand that the word church in the Bible is actually assembly. So it is a gathering community, it's an assembly. And as a community, we need to define what then it is about. And these three church avenues, ministry avenues are about what the church is about. As a gathered community, the church meets in the Hope Avenue for worship every week and for teaching. As a sent community, the church gathers in Love Avenue programs and activities with the aim of reaching out to the community around it with the gospel. And as a disciple community, the church gathers outside the church buildings in the Faith Avenue with the objective of growing in faith together. So this is the nature of the church. It is a gathering community, it is a sent community, and it is a discipling community, a community that is growing as disciples of Jesus. This session, we're focusing on the church as a faith or discipling community. And what does that mean? The Gospels, if you read the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are very clear about what discipleship means for the church. Just to go through quickly, in Matthew 16:24, Jesus said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. So there are certain things that Jesus expected and wants to see us as disciples are doing to push forward our faith. 2 Peter 3:18, Peter calls us to grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So not only do we get saved, but there's an expectation that over time we actually grow in this faith. We get to know God better. We get to have lives that are changed, impacted, and that is part of what the Faith Avenue represents. Acts 2. Sorry, somebody needs to mute on the other side. Everybody, please just mute so that there's no background noise coming through. Thank you. Acts 2:46, they broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts. And we said, as they break bread in their homes, they share the scriptures, they share their faith, and they discuss what's happening amongst them. Galatians 6:2, carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. This demands that we meet together often to be able to carry each other's burdens. You can only carry my burden if you are walking with me. You cannot carry my burden if you are not walking with me. And walking each other is not a theoretical idea, it's a principle that requires that we actually, in reality, working together, that we're spending time together in the same spaces. There might be opportunities to meet virtually like we're doing now, but there is a real person-to-person, face-to-face interaction that is required for us to be able to carry each other's burdens. And that is, there are some things that we're not able to share on the phone, we're not able to share online, and we're only able to share face-to-face with somebody, the things that we're going through. And so we are encouraged here to carry each other's burdens, and that can only happen if the church is gathering together outside the church meeting. 1 Corinthians 3:2, I had to feed you with milk, not with solid food, because you weren't ready for anything stronger, and you still aren't ready. This is the lament of Paul to the Corinthian church, that even though the church had started a few years before, he finds that they are still not growing in the faith. They are still having to be fed with milk, as he says, and not with solid food. And so what we're expecting with the Faith Avenue is that over time, we begin to continue growing in the faith, in the knowledge of God, in the knowledge of Christ, so that we are no longer relying on the spiritual milk, but on this spiritual solid food that God has for us. There are things that Jesus said, for example, to the disciples, there are so many things I wish I could share with you, but you are not ready to receive them. and they were to receive them later when they have grown in the faith. And so it is with us today. Unless we are growing in the faith, there are some things that God won't be able to reveal or share with us because we're not ready to deal with them or receive them. And so it's important that we continue to grow in our faith every day, every week, every month, every year. Hebrews 5:12-14 repeats a similar thought that Paul shared with the Corinthians. He says, in fact, though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you the elementary truths of God's word all over again. You need milk, not solid food. Anyone who lives on milk, being still an infant, is not acquainted with the teaching about righteousness. But solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. So there is very clear mandate. Sorry, somebody is still unmuted.
The whole Southern Africa. Yo hapa likubulela kena director luno.
I'm gonna try to see who this is and mute them.
It's somebody called Galaxy J3 2016.
Okay. Okay, managed to mute them. All right, so what you can see, therefore, is that the principle of growing in the faith, growing in the knowledge of God, growing in our work, understanding the scriptures better all the time as we continue to work in the faith is a central requirement or expectation of us as believers, that we should be growing in our faith. We can't continue to be children in the faith. We need to continue to grow. And that's therefore a requirement that when people get baptized, there is a path or discipleship path that they go through to grow in their faith, which is what Jesus said, that you not only do you baptize and make disciples, but you also teach them all the things that I've taught you. So there is a teaching requirement post-baptism that is required for people to grow in the faith. Okay, so what are the markers of a healthy faith avenue? Firstly, it is a church life that is happening outside of the Sunday church service. Okay, so church is not about us gathering weekly on a Sunday morning or afternoon, whatever the time is that we gather for church worship. It is also a life beyond that, the life during the week outside those meetings. What is their life beyond that? Or the only time we see church members is at the church service. If that is the case, then our faith avenue is going to be very weak and our growth is going to be very weak. We find that historically the growth in the church has not been by private Bible studies that we all do in our homes alone. Even though that might be necessary, there is an element where we need to be doing this together, growing together in the faith. So it's important that we have a life or a church life outside the Sunday church service. If our only meeting with each other is in the church service and never outside of that, then we have something missing in our ministry of the church. New disciples are being formed or are growing, are being taught, and that is what another element of a healthy faith avenue represents. That when there are new people who are being baptized, those members are being taken through a very formal or guided way of growing them in the faith, so that after 5 years, after 10 years, they are not believers who are not, who don't have roots. Therefore, that when they face any kind of difficulties, they have no biblical background to be able to withstand that with the word of God. We know that when Jesus was tempted by the devil, his weapon was the word of God. He told the devil, it is written such and such, it is written such and such. And that is what you want to get to, where all our members, when they face difficulties, they have the biblical view of the world and the things that they are facing, and they are able to say, the scriptures say X, Y, Z, and therefore I can't do this or I can do this. And that is what we want over time. If they don't have the knowledge of the scriptures, then it is very easy for them to be challenged by the difficulties and the temptations of the world without any biblical rootedness. Thirdly, existing disciples are growing in relationship with one another and in following the way of Jesus. So not only are we growing in the faith as individuals, in knowing our scriptures, in knowing who God is and what he's doing in our lives, but also we are growing in relationship with one another. We have been called into the body of Christ. We are one body, and that requires us to be growing together in relationship with each other. So if we are not growing into relationship with each other, there's something missing in our church life. So the Faith Avenue, or Healthy Faith Avenue, is part of that we are growing in our relationships with one another in the faith, that we are growing to be friends, we're grown to be people that we can share life with, and when we have difficulties, we can share each other. We mentioned the sharing or carrying each other's burdens earlier. We can only share one another's burdens when we are in relationship with one another, and serious, deep relationships for that matter. It's only when that is true that we find it easier to then share or carry one another's burdens. And also growing in the way of Jesus, following Jesus. Now, there are multiple Faith Avenue spaces. Often when we speak of discipleship and so on, we tend to limit it to Bible studies and things like that. So I just want to discuss here briefly all the various spaces where the Faith Avenue happens. And as I said earlier, the Faith Avenue is not just about head knowledge of the scriptures. It is also about building relationships with one another, walking the journey of faith with one another, supporting one another with what life is throwing at us. That's what it is about. So there are various Faith Avenue spaces that we need to be mindful of, that need to be part of our Faith Avenue in a church, for our church to be healthy in this regard. Multiple connect groups, this is what previously we can refer as care groups, where members get together on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, monthly basis, and the intention is to simply share what God is doing in their lives, praying together, those that need prayers. That's what it is about. And then there are Bible study groups where people get together to study the Bible together, whether it's somebody who's leading the Bible study, or the members of the Bible study group take turns to prepare different things and they come and share with everyone. Those also are Faith Avenue spaces. Discussion groups where there is get together to discuss. For example, there might be a group that you form that says on a weekly basis, we'll get together during the week, and the objective will be to go through the sermon that was given on a Sunday, for example, and discuss what does it mean for us. What did we understand? What did you take away? How do we implement that in our lives? So there can be discussion groups like that that go together to discuss things like that. A life club, it's one of those things. You can have a life club in your church, which also is there to equip people as they grow together in public speaking and other elements of life. Relationship building, I've mentioned that element as a critical element. Braais that we get. So when you have a braai and you invite other church members to your braai, that is a Faith Avenue, because when you are at that braai, iron sharpens iron. So those are effective Faith Avenue groups. And unless you are having those kind of occasions where you get together, then some of these things will not happen. Family camping weekends, where the church groups, either 2 families or 3 families, or even the whole church goes out camping together. Sports events, where those who are interested in rugby or netball or soccer, whatever sport it is, go together to a sports event to watch the sports together. And once again, you expect that iron will be sharpening iron in those moments when we are spending time together. The objective here is to build relationship together. It is to spend time together. Book clubs. Some people form book clubs where you are reading different books, and people who have read books that others haven't read come and share the book that they've read. And together we learn. So I don't have to read all the books in the world, because my friends are reading them and they will come and tell me what the book says. And if I want to read it myself for more detail, I can do that. But if not, at least I know what the book is about. Book clubs are a very effective way of a Faith Avenue. Tea parties, getting together for tea or for whatever it is that you want to get together for. Birthday parties that we invite each other for, and any other activities like that where we get together, not for Bible study, not for anything else, but other than just spending time together. Those are Faith Avenue spaces that we should not ignore. Cross-generational care, youth groups where youth get together, either for Bible study or for whatever activity they have, outings that the youth may have, church retreats, whether they are happening nationally or regionally or congregationally. In fact, congregations need to normalize having church retreats as a church, because then outside the church service, you get the time to spend time together for 2-3 days outside the church service. And there's no better way to build deeper bonding relationships than that. So these are some of those elements that impact the Faith Avenue effectively. Visitation ministry for the elderly and people who are not able to come to church for ill health or whatever reason. When you visit people in their homes because they are sick or whatever, those are Faith Avenue ministries where we encourage one another, we strengthen each other, we carry each other's burdens, we pray with each other. Those are all effective Faith Avenue spaces. So I just wanted to highlight that when we speak about the Faith Avenue, we're not speaking about formal Bible study teaching opportunities only. Those are some of that, but there is every opportunity we have to gather outside the church service as members, as brothers and sisters. We are involved in the Faith Avenue because we're growing together in the faith, we're growing together in our relationships with one another, and we're able to impact each other in that way as iron sharpens iron. Mentoring relationships are being developed where two people, you are mentoring somebody who is involved in ministry. Maybe you are a pastor or you are a ministry leader, you are supporting or mentoring somebody else. This can be true, for example, for a band where somebody is being trained to play a guitar or keyboard or whatever it is. Those kind of relationships are also Faith Avenue spaces where members are getting together often for whatever purpose it is. So it is important that all these spaces are part of our toolbox for the Faith Avenue, that we are using all of these to effect and advance our Faith Avenue. Okay, so how then do you start a healthy Faith Avenue in your church? This is the formal part. So as I've discussed the previous slide, there are formal and informal part. So the brides and the getting together at birthday parties and all those other elements are the informal avenues of the Faith Avenue. The formal avenues, and that's the point I want to make now, to say you cannot leave your Faith Avenue simply to the informal programs. You also want to have some formal programs that you are deliberate about, you are intentional about, because the other ones will happen as in the course of life. But there needs to be other Faith Avenue activities that are intentionally planned and they are made part of the church program. So one way of doing this, identify 3 to 5 or whatever number, depending on your church size, households or families whose adult members will be gifted and willing to host and facilitate a group. So whether it's a prayer group or a Bible study group or a discussion group or whatever kind of group that you want to form, you need spaces to gather, okay? And you need, if there are members who are able to host in their homes, you need to identify those that are able to host this kind of groups. Sometimes there might be nobody able to host. You might go and gather at a coffee shop, but if you gather in a coffee shop, obviously they'll want you to be buying their coffee or their tea, and that might be costly. So you want to be able, if there are members who have homes that they can provide as hosts, and they don't need to be. So if you are a host, you don't have to be a facilitator. So you can provide the space for the meeting, but somebody else can be the group facilitator who facilitate the discussion or whatever happens when you gather in those groups. So being a host and being a facilitator doesn't need to be the same person. That can be split out. Some people may simply say, my home is available, but I'm not able to facilitate. Somebody else can facilitate that. And that is one thing that you can do. You can then ask the families to join you for a 6 to 8 week small group where you then train them in terms of how do you host, how do you facilitate groups, how do you facilitate different kinds of discussions, and how do you guide the discussion that not only one person dominates, but you get to hear everybody, you get to hear where everybody is, and what, depending on what kind of small groups you want to start. So you don't just say, okay, everybody go and meet in your small groups, and you haven't given them any equipping of how these small groups should function. So once you've identified it, facilitators and the hosts, have a session for them for a few weeks where you take them through what it will look like for them to host and facilitate the small groups before they actually start running these small groups. And during the group, model the relationship building and good discussion facilitation techniques. So you want to show them, how do you build relationships when people come? How do you facilitate a good discussion so that when people come to those discussions, they go away inspired and encouraged and enlightened by what the discussion were about. That's what you want to achieve, how to build relationships and how to grow in the knowledge. The building relationship part, it's important to mention that often, and that's historical, that people who have been together for a long time can become a closed group. That even though we're gathered in this small group, there may be 2 or 3 coming there who are already close friends, and the other 3rd or 4th or 5th members who are new to the group may be left out. So you want to watch against that, that new people coming in are not left out of the group because everybody else already have their inside language that they speak about. They speak about events and laugh because they know the history of what those are. You want to be inclusive to new people coming in, that they too can build a stronger relationship with you. Otherwise, then you can find that your people will come, but they never feel part of the group, and therefore they fall out of the group again. So you want to model how to build deep relationships that do not exclude others, and also facilitate good discussion that include everyone in the discussion. And after the group have run their course, you identify best fits for facilitators and hosts to multiply out into new connect groups. So after you have done that, equipping facilitators and hosts, then you get them out to start running these small groups. This should be an ongoing activity, and it's a key function of the Faith Avenue leader. The Faith Avenue leader, if you're in the congregation, because you need to appoint one who monitors all this program of the Faith Avenue spaces. Their main job is to be continuously finding facilitators, continuously finding hosts that can facilitate and host these groups. And therefore they continuously continue to train and equip people who can do that. And they themselves attending one of these meetings as it is, okay? And when you start these connect groups, you must start them with a multiplying DNA. What do we mean? We mean that each of these groups, their intention is not to remain a closed group forever. It is to grow to such extent that the group multiplies into other smaller groups. And therefore it must not, the objective must not be to remain that we as a group are going to continue meeting together for the rest of our lives. The intention is that this group over time will grow, and then it can split into 2, 3, 4 more groups. And over time, there are many other groups that may grow from this one group, where other people, after attending your group for a while, they realize that they can also become a host, and they can also have a group at their place in a different space. And that's what you want. And we must not see that as a bad thing, because sometimes when we have groups like this, we want to keep them intact and never want them to grow. And when you reach a certain size, the group becomes unwieldy and difficult to manage. So when you reach a certain size, it is important to have the space to multiply and start another group where other people will meet. And this obviously is driven by where people live and where they stay, so that people don't have to travel long distances to be able to attend these. Okay, so the Faith Avenue leader needs to lead and model, and the pastor continues to promote connect groups in the church, so that people understand that these are important ministries of the church. Okay. So what happens at a connect group, just to share some thoughts on that, and this is not exhaustive, there are limitless ideas of what you can do at a connect group. Okay, but essentially a connect group looks like friends sharing a meal. Okay, so what we read in Acts 2, that they gathered in their home, they got together in their homes and shared meals. That's what it looks like. Sometimes that's all it is, gathering together and share a meal, share a pizza, whatever it is that you share. And in the process, pray together, study together, discuss things together. That's what it is about. Or people discussing a topic or a book. That's what a small connect group looks like. Okay, so it's a small gathering of people deepening their relationships within the group and with God. That's what it is about, essentially. That's what the objective is. Okay, so the ultimate objective is not what happens in the group. It's about the growth and the relationships that are being built. That's ultimately what we want to achieve. So sometimes people say, no, we can't get together for Bible study, or we can't get together because we are not good in facilitating, we can't conduct a Bible study, or we can't do this. That's not the objective. The objective is growing together in relationship and growing together with God. And that happens when we meet together and gather together as members. The other stuff we add to facilitate and formalize how that happens. But the first primary objective you want to achieve is the gathering itself, because that, in fact, achieves the secondary purposes. Okay, you want members who are starting to open to share their experiences, their thoughts, and their feelings, because that's the only way we can grow together. If we are not growing into relationships that we begin to trust each other, that we can share our experiences, share our thoughts, share what we're feeling, share our challenges, then we can't grow together. The discussion flows around how the members see God working in their lives, and learning about God's character and what He is doing in their spaces. More mature believers are intentional in engaging new believers in their faith journey. So those that are more mature should be sharing more of their experiences in terms of how they've experienced certain things, because others will have challenges and things and questions that you might have gone through before. And so therefore you want mature believers to be able to share those with others. And we grow together in discipleship. As we grow together, and discipleship is the goal that we want. A disciple of Christ not only speaks to the ways of Christ, but also demonstrates in the way he or she lives their lives. So we're expecting that people's lives are also going to be changing and growing in the process. Integration points with other avenues. So one of the things that we must always be mindful of when watching against is to think of these 3 avenues as separate programs, okay? Because they are always integrated. What happens in one always overflows into the other. And we must always be mindful of those integration points with other avenues and not see them as separate. Which is why we continuously meet together as ministry leaders of Hope, Faith, and Love to see where these integration points are and how we can support each other's ministries to make them more effective. Because if they remain disintegrated, then they won't be effective. So firstly, a connect group can become a missional community. It can become a love avenue. So you can start a group like that with the aim of reaching out to others with the gospel. So a book club, for example, does not need to be made up of only your church members. A book club can be made up of friends who are not church members as well. They can come to that, depending on what kind of books you read. And once again, the books that you read do not need to necessarily be just religious books. It can be all kinds of books. So there are all kinds of things that people need to learn and read about. So the love avenue and the faith avenue can have an integration point where they connect groups that are meeting together for brides, for birthdays, for discussions, for book clubs, or whatever the activity is, are not only made of church members. They are also inviting other people from outside to be part of those. Even if it is a Bible study, you can invite other people to join a Bible study because you're discussing a topic that maybe they are interested in. You maybe are discussing, you're having a marriage Bible study, discussing marriage in a Bible study over several weeks. Anybody of your friends who are married can be invited to those kind of Bible studies and learn from them. And that's what you want to do. So when you do that, then you want your love avenue ministry leader to also be involved and support that, because you are also now supporting their ministry avenue in that way. Okay, so an intentional group of Christian brothers and sisters are willing to join together, not just with each other, but with others who are invited to be part of that community. And that's what you want eventually your groups to do. Otherwise, they become an inside group that is never impacting the community around it. So you want to start groups that have a missional focus and are open to inviting people from outside their faith space. And so a connect group also can become a connecting point for Sunday guests. So people who come to the Hope Avenue on Sunday mornings who are new and they want to start attending, it is important that the faith ministry avenue leader finds a home for them in the connect groups. So find a group that they can join, that they can be part of, so that they are not only coming to church, but they are also starting to build relationships with other church members in the connect groups. So that's what you want to do. And unless you have these connect groups, you find that when new people come into the church service on a Sunday, you don't have connection points for them so that they're able to join the group. So you want to be able to do that. So you want people who come to church to be referred into the connect group that they can also begin to have deeper relationships with other members of the church. So as new people connect to our church expressions on Sunday morning, it is key to bridge them into smaller gatherings where life happens, because that's what you want. And that's the point at which they are going to be growing and learning and growing in relationship with others. Okay, so connect groups can become that space for deeper relationships for new members. Connect group can also become the entryway to the greater body, where people come into the small group, and then by attending a small group, then they get invited to come also to church. Okay, so people can start at church and go to a small group, or they can start in a small group and then go to church. All those are possible integration between the various avenues. So as new people engage in small groups, they are eventually invited to participate in the greater body, finding their best fit within the faith, hope, and love avenues. So that's what you want. So we must always be mindful that of these integration points, that in the various spaces where people are, whether it's in the Hope Avenue or the Faith Avenue, the Love Avenue, there's always points at which these three will interact and cross-pollinate, and we need to be mindful of that and make it intentional. Okay, so in the next few minutes before we finish the presentation, I just want to discuss how then do you launch your Faith Avenue ministry in your local church if you don't have one yet. Okay, I would like to just show this picture, which is a drill down of the key pillars of the of a healthy Faith Avenue. It is the church life, it is the connect groups, and there is the cross-generational care groups that we've discussed earlier. So all these are the key pillars of the Faith Avenue: the church life, which is about life outside the church; the connect groups, which is the Bible study group, the discussion groups, whatever groups we're having there; the cross-generational groups like retreats and stuff like that. All these make up what our Faith Avenue is about. And we need to be minding each of these. And as you can see, the connect group, we need hosts and you need facilitators. The church life needs activity coordinator, and you need practical support ministries where we're supporting each other in life, where people have certain needs and we're there to support them. Family-based youth ministry, where youth are getting together. Visitation ministries, we talked about, where you visit members in their homes who are not well, and so on. So all these are key elements and key pillars of the Faith Avenue ministry. And once again, this is just something that you can look. So you need to appoint coordinators for each of these key pillars, somebody who coordinates the church life, ministries, cross-generational care, and connect groups. So that when somebody is sick, for example, you have people who are available and who are able to go visit them and pray with them. So that somebody, when we announce that somebody is sick, they are not alone and never visited by anybody, but there is a group that is formally organized that know that when there's somebody who is sick, we will take turns to visit them and pray with them. So you want somebody to be coordinating that it is not something that is happening haphazardly, but it's intentional and planned. Because when you don't plan it, then it may or may not happen. But when you plan it, it's most likely gonna happen. So you want to appoint coordinators for each of these who are gonna lead each of these streams. And you let each of them develop their quarterly plans. How do they see their ministry playing out? And then have the cost implications. Because if you are going to be formally asking people to do these visitations, you need to have a budget for them, because some of them might not be able to pay for transport to be able to get to where they need to visit members, but they want to do it. And therefore the church might need to budget for that, so that those that are designated people for the visitation ministry are able to have supported when they need to travel to attend these to these members who are sick. And so that then requires that you have a ministry plan. You design a quarterly ministry. We prefer that it's not an annual plan, it's a quarterly plan, so that for each quarter, you know what you're going to do over a 3-month period. This helps you to look more closer and see something that you can plan in a number of 12 weeks or so. And that's what you want to achieve. And the question you need to be asking yourself is, what are the appropriate activities for the Faith Ministry Avenue for each of the quarters? And here, one of the things that you want to be mindful, for example, so earlier in the year, we go through the season of preparing for Easter. During that period, you can have a Bible study group or a discussion group that get together on a weekly basis during the season of preparation for Easter where you are discussing and going through the Easter preparation together as a group. Or when you are going through the Easter season that we are in now, you can have a group that is getting together discussing what the implications of the Easter season are in our lives. When we go into the Advent season, you can have a connect group that is meeting together to go through that season of Advent together, discussing what the implications of that are. So these do not need to have lifespans of a year. You can have a connect group that lasts 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 3 months or 4 months or 6 months. And after that period, it stops and a different one starts. And people who have different interests can then join these various activities. So you want to say, what are the appropriate activities that we can focus on as a faith ministry avenue in each quarter? And that will be driven by what lies in each quarter in terms of the calendar. What are the other church events in the other avenues that are occurring in the quarter? Are there events that we can integrate across avenues? For example, we're saying, so if there is Easter coming and the Hope Avenue is planning Easter services and so on, we need as connect groups to see how then do we have connect groups that are supportive of what the Hope Avenue is going to be doing in that period. Who is the target audience for activities? We need to be clear about that. Who are we trying to target? Is it new believers who need to grow? Is it old believers that want to deepen their faith? Is the mix of that? Is the youth? Is it the children? We need to be clear about who the audience is for each of these. Do we have the gifts to execute the program? What are the gifting of the members to be able to participate and make these programs effective? And does our budget provide for what we are planning to do? What resources do we need? What prompts, what decor, what structure, what preparations are required to conduct key events for each ministry avenue? That's what you want to be asking yourself as you build your quarterly plans. And some of the key events that you need to plan around, whether you're planning a Love Avenue or Hope Avenue or Faith Avenue ministry, you need to be planning about the Christian holidays, Christmas, Good Friday, Resurrection, Pentecost. You need to plan around public holidays and others holidays like that, Youth Day, Women's Day, Heritage Day, birthdays of members. There might be 21st birthdays that are key events in the church life, or 40th birthdays, those kind of key milestone birthdays where people are going to have a party to celebrate that big event. You want to maximize those as part of your Faith Avenue program. Community events that are taking place. Is there a way that your Love Avenue can participate in that? Is there a way you can, as a connect group, go there with the intention of being able to make friends that you can pull into your connect groups, for example? So those are the kind of things that you want to be asking yourself. And just to close, I want to conclude with this remark of Benjamin Elijah Mays. He's an American who died, I think, around 1984. This is what he said, and I want us to be mindful of these words as we think about the various ministry avenues and the plans, ministry plans that we put together. He says the tragedy of life doesn't lie in not reaching your goal. The tragedy lies in having no goal to reach. So setting goals, he says, is very critical. And if you don't reach those goals, he says it is not the tragedy. It is not the problem. He says the problem or the tragedy of life is having no goals to reach. So one of the things we're trying to achieve with the Ministry Avenue to say, let's have very clear objectives, clear intentions of what we want to do with each of these ministries. It isn't a calamity to die with dreams unfulfilled, he says, but it is a calamity not to dream. It is not a disgrace not to reach the stars, but it is a disgrace to have no stars to reach for. And he says, not failure, but low aim is sin. He was a pastor. So that's the words I just want to conclude this with, to say, as we think of these ministry avenues, it is important that we become very intentional and we're clear with our plans, because when we're not having any plans, we're having no goals, we're having no dreams, then that will be a tragedy of our ministries in the end. So that's the introductory session to the Faith Avenue. As I said earlier, we're going to go into the small groups. And in the small groups, there are specific questions I would like you to be discussing. If you can write them down, I'll also put them up on the on the screen. So we have how many people on the group? We have about 33 people. We're gonna break out into about 6 groups. It will be about 5 people in a group. So you're going to be sent to a connect group, to a breakaway group. And these are the 3 questions I would like you to discuss in your group. The first question is, what is your key takeaway from the presentation? Something that stood out for you, that you say, of everything that was said, this is the one thing I'm taking away for me, or with regards to the Faith Avenue. Secondly, what are the elements of the Faith Avenue ministry that are already being practiced by your local church? Okay. The second question is, what are some of the elements of the Faith Avenue ministry that are already being practiced in your local church? So this is for the purpose of sharing with others, to say this is what we're already doing, and this is what others can learn from. And thirdly, what is the one thing that you can start implementing from today with regards to the Faith Avenue ministry in your local church? Okay, so those are the 3 questions. Firstly, what is your key takeaway from the presentation? Secondly, what are the elements that are already being practiced in your church that you think are already working? And thirdly, what is the one thing that you think you need to start implementing, that you can start implementing without too much trouble or difficulty, because it is easy to implement? So those are the 3 questions that we want you to discuss. So I'm going to automatically assign you to 6 breakout groups. So please accept. So you're gonna get a message on your screen that says join the breakaway group or breakout group or room. Please click yes, and then it will automatically take you to the breakout room. And then when you get there, just assign somebody to facilitate the discussion. And then we're gonna, the time is now, it's 2 minutes past 10. So we're gonna give you an hour. And then at 11, we will come back, and then we will get feedback from each of the groups, of the 6 groups. And then we will close at the end of that. So I'm creating the groups now. So please watch out for the message on your screen that says join the breakout group.